Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host and AEW enthusiast, Nuggy Doug, and in today's episode I'm going to be discussing Dynamite, October 5th, 2022 episode. And well, AEW has done it, ladies and gentlemen. 3 years of Dynamite was celebrated on this episode. So, despite everything that has been happening behind the scenes this seemingly recently, AEW is still rolling along. It's still a young company. 3 years is, not for, age of a company, it's not that old. And I think really AEW is still very much going through some growing pains, still trying to navigate the wrestling business. Tony Khan is, for the most part, they've had some pretty good success over the past 3 years, but, they got some backstage issues that they gotta learn how to navigate through. You got a lot of egos on your roster. You gotta figure out how to navigate all those egos, and that can be quite the challenge. But the main event of the show was a tag team match with Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Bryan Danielson and Daniel Garcia. And also Dynamite got a little bit of extra time this week, which is nice to see. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with Wheeler Yuta versus MJF. So the match was good as expected. Yuta's abilities between the ropes should not be doubted, and MJF has proven himself to be one of the best workers in all of AEW. With that said, a match like this would have meant more if MJF was working with someone that could believably beat him at this point in time. As talented as Yuta is, he is not yet a star, no matter how hard AEW attempts to push him as one. He is a step below an MJF in the hierarchy, and it showed late in this match, which did hurt the drama they were trying to build. Still, it was a good wrestling match, and also there was a fun moment between Rigo and MJF. I thought Rigo was going to take a bump, but I understand if AEW doesn't quite want to go there. Rigo does need to be taking bumps anyway, but it's still made for a fun moment. Yeah. TNT Championship match, Wardlow versus Brian Cage. And yes, Brian Cage still under contract for AEW, but he kind of got moved to Ring of Honor, so that's kind of where he's been, and wherever else. Now Cage from AEW has been absent from AEW television for quite some time, and he was underutilized by AEW before he disappeared, despite being a talented heavyweight competitor, which was on full display as he showed up and showed out against Wardlow in the match that hopefully will earn him some more looks from management. I doubt it, but it would be nice to see Brian Cage pop up a little bit more. This was a guy who once competed against Jon Moxley for the world title. Post-match stuff was fine, but it also highlighted a major issue with AEW's booking, or at least one part of AEW's booking, and that is their booking of FTR, who continue to be one of the most popular acts in the company. They got quite the pop when they made an appearance, but are being underutilized in key positions. Then again, you have to think about it too, I believe they still hold 3 titles from 3 different promotions. Now the Ring of Honor stuff can be defended on AEW TV, but the Japan ones, and then I think the Mexico ones as well, those, that's not AEW right there, and they shouldn't really be on AEW TV anyway because they're not AEW titles. So I understand that they are busy elsewhere. I know they were in London competing at some sort of Japan event there, but nonetheless they are mainly under contract with AEW, so they should be having more, so they should be a presence on TV. And also I believe they're still #1 contenders for the tag team titles, right? So they are underutilized a bit at the moment, but they will find their way back in the title scene. But if they are to be the champions, I don't know if they are to be champions again, it won't be anytime soon, as the Acclaim just won the titles and just started their reign. And if you want to turn the fans against FTR, having them beat the Acclaim is a surefire way to do it, which I don't think AEW wants to do. There's no point in booking FTR versus the Acclaim unless FTR is putting over the Acclaim, which would be great because, if you can beat a team like FTR, that really goes a long way in establishing your reign. So again, it just depends on what AEW wants to do with FTR in the title scene. Do you want them to win, or do you want them to put over the current champions? I guess we'll see. Speaking of the Acclaimed, they got to celebrate National Scissoring Day, because scissoring is a handshake. And this was a fun, spirited promo segment that highlighted the charisma of the young champions and why they have been able to become genuine breakout stars for the company. The arrivals were stuck in his music interrupting the segment. Well done right there. Booking him in a match against Billy Gunn, not so much. But the layout and execution of said match will determine final judgments on whether or not it was a good idea to book said match. But this segment, though, did prove that the Acclaimed, despite being young and relatively unexperienced in the role of champions, can carry an entire segment. They were great, and those in power should be comfortable and confident with positioning these guys in the position that they put them in. So, pretty fun little segment right there. Really showcased the personality of the Acclaimed right there. And then the show concludes with Bryan Danielson and Daniel Garcia versus Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. So Guevara picking up the win, despite a very obvious, very real hatred for him by fans. Felt him, seemed to be a bit tone deaf from AEW. Seemed to be a tone deaf away from AEW to close out the show. There were ways for, Jericho and Guevara to get the win without having to go there. Now, the reason why Guevara has heat from the fans at the moment, I don't know about backstage, but certainly heat from the fans, is because him and Andrade got into it on Twitter, and then they got into it in person. There was a actual, altercation, and Andrade got sent home. Don't know what that means for his match against Preston Vance, if that's still happening, or not, but that backstage drama once again. AEW's gotta do a better job of kind of getting that under control, so you don't have incidences like this, because Guevara was not like before, but that was just, and now he's genuinely not so now you gotta deal with that as well. Now, as for the match itself, good match, as should be expected given the participants. Danielson was great, Garcia continued to shine, and Jericho was present. If nothing else, Jericho does continue to put in the work necessary to prove that he still belongs in the spots that he is in, and for that, I think he's earned some acclaim, and also I think he's also kind of earned his spot in the spots that he is in. Even if the booking surrounding him is questionable, again, the Ocho sounded cool, but wasn't necessary. Probably not. Probably not. Next week, though, he puts the Ring of Honor title up. He defends the Ring of Honor title against Bryan Danielson in Canada, so AEW makes their debut in Canada. That's nice to see. I think they've been doing just US shows for the past 3 years, so seeing them being able to at least expand into another country, albeit Canada, but still another country nonetheless, that's nice progress for the company there. You gotta, for AEW to really, I don't know quite where I was going with that, but to see them though kind of establish roots in another country though, great step forward for the company, show some growth. Bryan Danielson versus Jericho 3 should be a good match, especially with the title on the line. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.